Jeremy Renner, who is a town doctor, also a quasi-right-wing figure. There are a few references to that.
Is it just that he's divorced? Is that what he means? That's incredible. So here's the thing. Last year, I debunked Ben Shapiro's incredibly bad review of Superman, and that video did numbers, thank you so much. I was fully expecting him to do a Supergirl review that I could also use to make fun of him, but it seems the Daily Wire isn't doing so hot at the moment. Ruh-roh. So instead, let's make fun of his truly awful review of Wake Up Dead Man. It's just a small problem, though. In my original video about Superman, I got drunk for that. It's the only way I can listen to Ben Shapiro, you understand? So I tried to do the same thing with Wake Up Dead Man, but I got so drunk, I somehow recorded 2 full hours of footage, and I remember none of it. I am so sorry to all of my fans, to all of my audience. I am the most drunk I've ever been on camera. Holy shit. It was unusable. And, you know, I filmed that video before I was a father. I have a child now. Whereas previously only my gay fans called me daddy, now finally my wife does. And I gotta set a good example for my beautiful baby boy. So let's try this one last time. One more time. One more time for me, please. Benji, Benny, Benny boy, Benny, Benjamin. I'm gonna react to Ben Shapiro's Wake Up Dead Man review at a time when nobody cares about it. No one's talking about this movie, but I'm doing it. And now Chad is here. Chad is here as well. Say hello, YouTube. Look at all these beautiful faces. So unlike the Superman video that I did reacting to Ben Shapiro, where I debunked him with facts and logic, this time it's more so that Ben doesn't understand writing very well, which I think might come as a surprise to some of you, or none of you, actually. It's a theme that pops up in his work a lot, where he cares so much about the plot, but not the story, and it's such a distinctive thing. See, I'm already rambly. This is what happens when I'm off script. I'm already so rambly. Should we just jump into it? The thing is, right, Ben Shapiro doesn't watch movies, then review them. He comes up with the review in his head before he watches a movie, and then he doesn't really watch the movie. He tries to pay attention to any parts that might make his argument a little more sound, even though they're definitely not sound, and he'll throw away everything else that debunks his views. I think this Wake Up Dead Man review is a perfect example of him not watching the movie and not understanding the movie. So this brings us very clumsily to, let's just jump into it, Ben Shapiro's review of Wake Up Dead Man.
It's much more exciting to me when you get, you know, a group of people who are like coming up to you and really, really excited about it. And then there are other people who walk out just, I mean, literally saying it was the worst movie I've ever seen. Having those two extremes to me is, you know, is the mark of the type of movie that I want to make.
The thing is, Ben thinks that he has a point here already. Ben thinks that that's like a fun, like, gotcha, but like, Rian Johnson's just correct. Like, I don't know. That's just, it's what a weird way to start your review about a person you hate, by being like, I want to make movies that sometimes people don't like. Yeah, you got him, Ben.
Alrighty, folks, we're here to review Wake Up Dead Man. It's the latest Knives Out mystery from director Rian Johnson, responsible for masterpieces like The Last Jedi. And
it's that classic Ben Shapiro editing. You just throw a little clip on there, and that's comedy.
Onion, both of which you can view my prior reviews. Obviously, I love them. It is filled with stupid characters and stupid writing, and Rian Johnson's a stupid, stupid man. We'll get to that in a moment.
I hate his editing. I'm sorry. It's so bad. I want you to keep in mind that he just doesn't like Rian Johnson, which is fine. The problem is that the reasons he doesn't like Rian Johnson's work isn't really based in anything substantial if you watch the movies. Ben decides that he doesn't like the movie and then ignores everything that proves him wrong.
Okay. So, gigantic cast. You look at this cast and you think this could be like an all-time great murder mystery, right? This could be an Agatha Christie murder mystery.
I just want to say, and I know we're just a little bit into this, but I really love Wake Up Dead Man. I think Knives Out was lightning in a bottle. I think Glass Onion is very fun. I feel like I certainly like it more than most, but Wake Up Dead Man is just, I watched it 3 times, like in the span of a week. It was so good. So good. The lighting, the messages and the themes. By the way, the messages and the themes are things that Ben just can't comprehend because all he cares about is plot details and not what the movie is trying to say about anything. But again, we'll get into it.
Daniel Craig as Benoit Blanc, the private detective. And you have Josh O'Connor as Judd Duplessis, who is a priest and former boxer. Good actor. He's good. You have Glenn Close. You have Josh Brolin, Mila Kunis, Jeremy Renner, Kerry Washington, Andrew Scott. A veritable wealth of riches, a cornucopia. And somehow Rian Johnson blows all of it. I will say that the movie holds your interest. It holds your interest because it moves pretty fast, but it violates the same cardinal rule as Glass Onion.
Okay. Hey, chat, what do you think his cardinal rule is that he thinks this movie breaks? Ben thinks you can see the twist from a mile away. If I'm remembering correctly, because I did watch this 3 months ago while completely blackout drunk, I think you are so opposite to what Ben's point is that I'm almost willing to give you the point there. It's the exact opposite. The movies don't let you. That's his complaint. If I'm remembering correctly, let's see.
It's so dumb.
It's so dumb, it's brilliant.
No!
And this drives me up a wall. If you're going to present a mystery, like the original Knives Out, you must present the clues to the viewer such that if they watch the first 2 acts of the film, and then the reveal happens in the 3rd act, sure, they might have missed something, but all the clues are present, so you could have theoretically figured out who did what.
All right. I have a couple bones to pick about this. Also, I should have said this earlier. Spoilers if you haven't seen Wake Up Dead Man. We're going to talk about it. So Ben's argument here is that you need to be able to have all of the clues in order to solve the mystery. The audience has to have everything available to them that the detective does, so that the detective just sees something a little bit different than the audience might and is able to put that all together, and the audience goes, oh yes, of course, right? And I get it. That's a very rewarding feeling in a mystery or in a puzzle. I mean, that's what makes puzzles so fun, is that sort of eureka moment of being like, oh yes, of course, that's what it is. The thing that I have an issue with is I have seen Wake Up Dead Man 3 times. Twice with just my wife, Emily, and a 3rd time with her family. When I was watching with Emily's family, halfway through the movie, her brother said, would we be able to solve the mystery by now? And concretely, 100% without a doubt, the answer is yes, Ben. The thing that I think is tripping Ben up is that there are 2 main mysteries in this movie. You can solve the first one, like I said, about halfway through the movie. The issue is, then it continues. Right? I'm dancing around it, even though I said there was going to be spoilers. The first mystery is, how did Monsignor Wicks die? You can figure that out pretty early on if you pay attention. The movie gives you all the clues. Now, again, you would have to pay very close attention to everything. Like the fact that you see Jeremy Renner putting something in his pocket after Monsignor Wicks is discovered dead. That's the remote for the squib. Also, Thomas Hayden Church's character Samson uses the garage door remote to close his garage door at a certain point, which flickers the TV, the game that he's watching on the TV, which again is another clue that like radio interference is at play with the squib, the remote squib. So you get all of those clues pretty early on. Not to mention the fact that the wolf's head is wholly visible on Monsignor Wicks' vestments, just out in the open. It's just painted red, which is, again, another clue. Why was it painted red? That's the question everyone asks. But it is there. It's there in the scene. The picture, right? The picture that Benoit Blanc holds up and puts down, right, in the bar, it shows the 2 missing wolf heads, not just the one. All of these little things, again, you might have to pause at certain points to pay attention, but when the movie does these flashbacks to show you like, oh yeah, remember this clue? Oh yeah, remember this clue? It's all there, man. It's all there. Everything is there. So I get frustrated with Ben Shapiro when he says like, oh, you have to lay out all the clues. They do. The problem is another couple of murders happen and it's a new mystery. It's a continuation of the first mystery, but it's new stuff. And then you're like, oh, well, how was I supposed to know that that was going to happen? You weren't, Ben. The characters didn't know they were going to kill each other. I think that's where he's getting tripped up, is the fact that there are multiple mysteries. There's the one main one that sort of cascades into a bunch of other ones. And he's like, well, how was I supposed to know that Jeremy Renner was going to kill Thomas Hayden Church? And it's like, you weren't. It just happened.
In the first Knives Out, very unlikely you're able to figure out the mystery the first time you watch it, but once you know the answer, you could go back and rewatch the first Knives Out, despite all my criticisms of the film, and you could actually see how the mystery was constructed.
You can do that with Wake Up Dead Man, Ben. I told you all the clues.
The critique of Glass Onion is that precisely the opposite was true.
My twin sister committed suicide.
You could watch the first half of the film, and you would learn 0 things that were really relevant to solving the mystery. Well, the same thing is true with regard to Wake Up Dead Man. As an actual piece of mystery filmmaking, it is lazy. It is lazy writing.
This frustrates me so much because Ben just doesn't understand writing. And we'll get to it in the biggest part of his review that I have a problem with. He confuses plot for story, and all he cares about is an airtight plot. All he cares about is that what the characters do makes logical sense from one thing to the next. And the story progression logically goes from one thing to the next. But he doesn't care about what these stories are trying to tell you as a viewer. Isn't Ben a failed Hollywood writer? Yeah, I believe he is a failed Hollywood screenwriter. I've heard that many times. And I think he's probably just so bitter that he's like, I'm going to show how everyone else is writing bad movies. Man, I don't know what to tell you. These movies are great.
A good mystery writer provides you with all the goods, all the pieces necessary to solve the puzzle. Sure, they may be weird fitting pieces. Sure, they might be partially obscured, but if you really work hard, you're able to get to the end. If you watch The Usual Suspects, you're able to get to the conclusion. If you watch Sixth Sense, all the clues are right there on the screen. That is not true with Wake Up Dead Man.
He's just wrong. Another clue, Ben, the Fabergé holder that held the little statue, right? That they zoom in on to show that it was a fancy brand, a thing that Glenn Close's character says about Grace Wicks. So again, it's another clue set up right in front of you, and there are so many of these. I don't know, man. He's just wrong. I wish I had the confidence to review a movie that I only half watched once.
That is not true with Wake Up Dead Man. Basically, there are a bunch of things that are not in evidence that are placed in the last third. And so you can be watching the film and have no idea how it's going to end, not because you're being a bad viewer, but because the writer is lazy.
No, you are being a bad viewer, Ben. You truly, deeply are. Watch a movie a second time before you review it, especially a mystery movie. Watch it again. The clues are there. I mean, even if you only watch it once, they flash back to show you that the clues were all there. I wish he gave a specific example. I think that's where I get frustrated with this. I wish Ben gave a specific example for what he's talking about here, because I can't think of one. I can't think of a single clue that wasn't forecasted in the movie. I wish I knew what he was talking about.
Now we go to the actual plot of the movie. Basically, Josh O'Connor is a young...
There's a difference between plot and story. The plot is... Here's the series of events that happens from one thing to the next. Ben's about to outline the plot. This happens, then that happens, the character does this, and then that happens because of that, and then this, and then that, and that's the plot. What Ben doesn't care about, or really doesn't seem to perceive, he doesn't understand that like movies have a story. He knows that they have plots. He knows that watching a movie is watching a series of events take place. But Ben doesn't seem to understand that a movie also has a story, a theme, something it's trying to get the audience to care about or to resonate with.
Basically, Josh O'Connor is a young priest who's been deployed to this parish run by Josh Brolin's Monsignor Jefferson Wicks, who is this charismatic and nasty right-wing priest. He's there basically to yell at all the people who come into his fold and to alienate them. The very basis of this movie is that religion is bad, unless it's basically the opiate of the masses.
This sucks, man. It's just not true. Whatever. Let's just keep watching, because I have an actual thing that I want to get to.
Really, the view of religion. Rian Johnson clearly hates Catholicism. He clearly hates religion. His basic take on religion is that religion, which sets moral standards and demands things of you, is bad. Only morons believe it. The original...
What are you talking about? Ben, what are you talking about? Father Judd is unwavering in his faith. The thing that like trips him up near the final third of the movie is when he realizes that he's abandoned his calling to God in search of trying to prove his own innocence in this murder. And I'm not religious. I used to be growing up. I was raised that way. I'm not religious now, haven't been for a very long time. In fact, I'm so not religious that when I was watching this movie with some of Emily's family, some of them who are religious came up to me at the end of the movie and were surprised that I liked this movie because they, as religious people, were like, I thought that was a very nice movie that shows that someone like Father Judd, who's very religious, very devout, never questions his faith, is very loving. He's not painted as the bad guy. He's painted as the good guy. And Benoit Blanc, who sort of you would expect in a lesser movie for this detective to sort of come in and basically like prove God doesn't exist. Right? This detective who's like, oh no, I'm on the side of the rationals and the skeptics. You would expect him to come in and like prove that God doesn't exist because that's what a lesser writer would do. Instead, what Rian Johnson does is he gives Benoit Blanc a religious moment, the road to Damascus moment in the movie, where he is going to do this big unraveling of like, I know who the culprit is and I'm gonna bring him to justice, right? And then he doesn't because of what Father Judd said earlier in the film about wanting the guilty, wanting people to make those decisions for themselves, to come forward on their own. And Benoit Blanc lets that happen. And he almost has like a little religious moment. Now, he doesn't become religious, obviously, in the end of the movie. Father Judd invites him to church and he's like, oh, there's nowhere I would rather not be. I think that's great that you can have two characters, one who is extremely devout, extremely religious, and another character who is absolutely far from it, the furthest from it, and they're both good guys. If you walked away from this movie thinking that Rian Johnson tells you that religion is bad and that only silly people believe in religion, I just think you watched the movie wrong. Yeah, he can't address the story because the story is very nuanced to look at religion, and we can't have that. That's a really good point, because like, listen to how Ben describes religion, right? How does he describe it here?
Opiate of the masses. That's really the view of religion. Rian Johnson clearly hates Catholicism. He clearly hates religion. His basic take on religion is that religion, which sets moral standards and demands things of you, is bad. Only morons believe it.
I think you're right about this, because Ben Shapiro views religion as that way of like, religion is the thing that gives you morality. And if you don't have that, then you're not moral. It's a very black and white look at the world. And so when you have a movie that's providing a nuanced take, then he just can't comprehend it because he already has a very black and white view of religion. And so if it's not his view, then it's basically, oh, if you don't believe that religion is the best thing ever, then you must think religion is bad. And you must think that religion is for silly, stupid people.
Only morons believe it. The original story is nonsense and trash. And basically, if it offers you any value, it's only the value in having kind of a good-hearted, low-level psychologist.
I'm fascinated by him saying that, like, the movie says that the story of the Bible is bad. The most beautiful scene in the movie to me was when Benoit Blanc and Father Judd meet for the first time, and Benoit Blanc effectively just says that he doesn't care for religion. He sees it as a thing that has been used to justify great acts of harm in the world. And if the movie left it there, then maybe I could see Ben's point. But the movie doesn't leave it there. Father Judd has a big rebuttal where he says, all of what we do here in the Catholic Church is a lot of storytelling. The way that we dress, the churches that we build to look old, even though they're quite new. It's a lot of storytelling and a lot of theater. But is it that way to hide the fact that it's all just made up, like a play, like a theater? It's all just storytelling? Or do we do it because through this storytelling and through this theater, it's the only way that we know how to share something that is deeply true? I'm paraphrasing, but that's what he says. And again, I'm not religious, so I side on the Benoit Blanc side of things. But the movie has that counterpoint with Father Judd. So I don't understand why Ben thinks that the movie is just whatever Benoit Blanc thinks. That it's just, oh, Benoit Blanc says religion is bad. It's like, yeah, sure, he does. But then you have this other main character called Father Judd, who's the opposite. view, and the movie shows both. And in fact, Father Judd's whole scene is like really beautiful because the sun comes out and it warms up the whole place, whereas Benoit Blanc takes his speech takes the sun away, cools everything out, darkens everything.
Have somebody who's sympathetic to you and offers you a feeling of absolution, that this is the only thing that matters in religion. Everything else is completely a waste of time. And at one point, Daniel Craig's Detective Blanc actually says that. He says to the young priest, the reason that you fell into religion is you felt guilty over the fact you were a boxer and you killed somebody in the ring, and therefore you sought a sense of absolution that you could only find in a church. And that is the message throughout the movie. Everybody...
No, it's not, Ben. Okay, hold on. I'm getting something from this. Did Ben Shapiro watch Wake Up Dead Man and think that everything Benoit Blanc said is what Rian Johnson thinks? Because Rian Johnson also wrote the other characters. Father Judd says, "Why do you think I became a priest?" Benoit Blanc says exactly what Ben said, right? You killed someone in the ring. You were very regretful of that. You wanted to seek penance for your sins, so you became a priest. But then remember the next thing that happens, Ben. That scene isn't over yet, Ben. The scene doesn't end with Benoit Blanc saying that. Father Judd says, "No, actually, that's not why I became a priest." Does Ben think that everything Benoit Blanc says is law? I'm baffled by it. He watched half of a scene. That's wild. An intern watched it for Ben and did a poor job on the notes. Yeah.
You sought a sense of absolution that you could only find in a church. And that is the message throughout the movie. Everybody who is deeply religious is a bigot or a charlatan. Everybody who follows the priest is corrupt and bad. Virtually everybody who is presented as a...
It's not true. There are other characters who are there. The Kaylee Spaney character is there not as a charlatan or as a bigot, but as someone who has been taken advantage of by Monsignor Wicks. In fact, if anything, it shows that Monsignor Wicks specifically takes advantage of people. Not that everyone in the church is bad, but that he is able to corrupt his flock, radicalize his flock, I believe is what they say in the movie, to whittle it down to just his most staunch supporters. In fact, other people come into the church, try to, be a part of the church, and Monsignor Wicks scares them away. So no, the movie, Ben, is not saying that anyone who goes to church, anyone who believes in religion, is a charlatan or a bigot. He's saying at this specific church, there is a leader who is radicalizing his flock so much that it is scaring other people away and making those who are staying more entrenched in his hateful, bigoted rhetoric. Then at the end of the movie, when Father Judd takes over, then the church becomes a more open place that people feel more comfortable going to. So it's not that the church is bad. I don't know, man. It's just not saying what Ben says it's saying.
Virtually everybody who is presented as a true villain of the piece is radically right-wing. And Rian Johnson isn't making any bones about this. Clearly, he is aiming for this. If you go character by character, everybody is either a sort of ignorant tag-along, like, for example, Thomas Hayden Church, who plays Glenn Close's husband in this.
This is another thing that I think Ben doesn't pick up on. The reason why Thomas Hayden Church's character is not radicalized like the rest of them is specifically because of this great movie detail where he doesn't listen to Monsignor Wicks's sermons. He is listening to his baseball games in church, so he's not being radicalized by the hateful speech. He's just there because his wife wants him there. I think that's such a great detail. I think that's fun.
Glenn Close's husband in this, he's sort of an innocent tag-along, or a vicious right-winger. So, for example, Josh Brolin's Wicks, he himself gets up there and he spews a bunch of kind of raging right-wing rhetoric about how the world is a threat to the church and you have to fight the world. And then it shows a bunch of YouTube videos of him, and they're all labeled with essentially Andrew Tate-like YouTube labels.
I think Ben is just salty about this part, though. I think Ben is just salty about this part. He feels called out. I think that's really the main thing about it. I think he just doesn't like this part.
He's supposed to be bad because he's a right-wing priest. That's why he's bad, as opposed to Josh O'Connor's priest, who basically has nothing valuable to say other than, I feel your pain. The Bill Clinton view of Catholicism.
What are you talking about?
Jeremy Renner, who is a town doctor, also a quasi-right-wing figure. There are a few references to that.
I think this is where I get frustrated. I want him to be more specific in his videos. What does he mean by that? Quasi-right-wing figure, there are a few references to that. Tell me more, Ben. Be specific. Tell me what you mean by that. I so badly want to know. Is it just that he's divorced? Is that what he means? That's incredible.
There are a few references to that. You have Andrew Scott playing Lee Ross, a best-selling author, who's a complete throwaway. I mean, again, this cast is a complete throwaway. You have Kerry Washington. She has been forced to take on the son of Monsignor Wicks, who of course has an illegitimate child. That's how you know that he's really bad, because he's a hypocrite. He's not just a right-wing guy, he's also a hypocrite.
Well, you don't have to say he's a right-wing guy and a hypocrite as if those are two different things. Got him!
That person is played by Daryl McCormick. The son of Jefferson Wicks is, of course, an aspiring right-wing politician. And so everything that he does is driven by his desire for power and his desire for glory. So the whole town is set up as this really right-wing town under the auspices.
No, not the whole town. The members of the church are. The core members. Not the town.
Really right-wing town under the auspices of this Monsignor, who's a right-wing figure. They're all judgmental. They're all terrible. They're all evil. Some of them are participating in murder. The ones who are not terrible and evil are victims of the terrible, evil right-wingers, and all the rest. Right, so that is the politics of the film. And again, the politics of the film is so scornful of traditional Catholicism. At no point do you get a real defense of Catholicism in any real way. Again,
you do in this. This is what's frustrating. This is exactly what I was saying. This scene that he's playing is Benoit Blanc saying that religion is bad in his opinion, that he doesn't care for it. This is the scene. This same scene continues. And then Father Judd talks about the good parts. Why does Ben only listen to Benoit Blanc? There are other characters in this movie. I get it. He's very handsome. He's a scene stealer. I get it. But there are other characters. The fact that he's even cutting to this scene to say, like, see, this proves my point. No, because the scene continues, Ben. Absolutely wild.
At no point do you get a real defense of Catholicism in any real way.
Except for this scene that Ben is showing on screen. What are you talking about, Ben?
Only value of religion in this particular movie is that a religious person could theoretically make a lady feel better after she led a terrible life, and then she's dying. That's pretty much the feeling of the movie. Near the end of the film, Josh O'Connor's character offers Daniel Craig the ability to come to a mass, and Daniel Craig says, there's nothing I would less like to do, which I think is Rian Johnson's generalized perspective. So that's the
Rian Johnson wrote the other characters of this movie. He wrote Father Judd. I can't believe how much his review hinges on just taking Benoit Blanc's views and perspective and words as, ironically, gospel. Unbelievable.
Which I think is Rian Johnson's generalized perspective. So that's the politics of the film. In terms of filmmaking, none of the performances stand out enough that you remember any of them. Again, the cast is just huge. And I
disagree, but it's not the point.
The only characters you're going to remember coming out of this are Daniel Craig, Josh O'Connor, Glenn Close, and Josh Brolin.
Oh no. There are no standout performances. There's only 4.
And maybe Netflix makes back their money on subscriptions because, again, star-studded cast, big P&A.
Why does he care? Why does he care if Netflix makes the money back? This is a review of the movie. Oh no, is Ted Sarandos gonna be okay?
But this is a lockbox mystery in a small town requiring no real special effects. Where did that money go?
Why do you care? First of all, the money went to the talent. There's a good amount of people. Also, the cinematography in this movie is gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. It looks spectacular. But again, why do you care?
I mean, I assume some of it went into Daniel Craig's pocket.
I assume Daniel Craig got paid.
And again, I assume people like this movie, but it's 144 minutes. It's 2 hours and 24 minutes. It's overlong. It's overstuffed. Nobody gets their fair shake. None of the clues lead to the final conclusion. You can understand the clues and still not get to the final conclusion. It's lazy. It's just lazy, which is the hallmark of Rian Johnson. Rian Johnson is a lazy writer. When he comes up with these ideas, he does not bother to try to construct a story.
This is the thing again, the plot versus story. Ben doesn't know what a story is. We haven't even got to the part that I wanted to even talk about yet.
He doesn't try to link up the pieces of the puzzle. He doesn't even try to present you with the pieces of the puzzle. He knows that if he does, he's afraid you'll outthink him. And so, instead, he just hides the entire puzzle except for like 2 pieces. And then, in the last third of the movie, he brings forth all of the pieces you've never seen and fills them in. And this drives me crazy, because if the thing is supposed to be clever, it should either be clever in its dialogue, it isn't.
I want to point out again that literally the murder weapon, or the fake murder weapon, was in plain view, tied to Monsignor Wicks's vestments. You could see it. It's in the movie. That's just one clue. They're all there. I wish he just had examples. It
should either be clever in its dialogue, it isn't. It should be clever in its character construction, it isn't. Or it should be clever in its plotting, it isn't. And even the end of the movie makes very, very little sense.
This is what I wanted to talk about. We're finally here. Are you with me? Let's talk about the end of this movie and how Ben Shapiro does not understand it.
Makes very, very little sense. Like a tag on the end as to what happened with this fortune that's sort of at the center of all of this, that's been converted into the diamond. And instead of using the diamond to do something good or worthwhile, or use that fortune to make people's lives better, the diamond is just sitting inside a statue at the end.
It makes no damn sense.
This is, even that little joke, it's such a great example of how Ben watches half of something, because even that line, that joke from the first Knives Out movie, it makes no damn sense, is followed by, compels me though. He watches half of a thing. Okay, let's talk about Eve's apple, the diamond, at the end of the movie. Because not only is Ben wrong that they should have just sold it to help out people in the church, to help out the community, that's explained actually in the plot, not the story, the plot, the thing that Ben cares about, the series of events, that's already explained at the end of the movie. Cy Draven already says that he is going to keep a close eye on the expenses of the church. He's going to audit the church. If they do anything to upgrade the church, to make donations to anything, he is watching it like a hawk. So already the plot shows that they can't just sell Eve's apple, the diamond. So that's taken care of, Ben. But let's talk about the story of Eve's apple, shall we? Because when I watched this movie, it reminded me of something. I try not to talk about this too much on main because people already call me the American H-Bomber guy, but I am very into Sherlock Holmes, specifically the original books, although I do really like some of the adaptations. And when I was watching this movie and they were doing this whole bit with Eve's apple, it reminded me of Sherlock Holmes and the Six Napoleons. So Sherlock Holmes and the Six Napoleons, or Sherlock Holmes and the Pearl of Death, is very similar, or at least it's similar in a sense. In this story, if you're not familiar, basically there is a priceless jewel, a pearl, that's been hidden in the bust of a Napoleon statue. Tell me if this scene seems familiar.
He literally brushed by it as he came in.
Amazing. And the Borgia pearls inside that?
If it isn't, I shall retire to Sussex and keep bees.
Look, there it is. By Jove.
Smashing a statue open to try and find a jewel inside. That is what happens in Wake Up Dead Man when they find that little Jesus statue on the Fabergé, what turns out to be a diamond holder, the holder for Eve's apple, and they smash it hoping to find something, some information about this money the Wicks family has. But unlike Sherlock Holmes, where they do find it, in here, they don't find anything. And that's the turning point for Father Judd when he realizes, he looks over at the smashed statue of Jesus, and he realizes that all of this running around, all of this trying to solve a mystery, has distracted him from his faith. What's interesting about the Borgias Pearl, similar to Eve's apple in Wake Up Dead Man, is the Borgias Pearl is a jewel that is so tied with death. It keeps exchanging hands, it keeps being lost and found and stolen, and everyone who is tied to it throughout history ends up dead, effectively. It is a jewel that has a lot of blood on its metaphorical hands. And that's exactly what happens with Eve's apple, right? Let's go back to Ben Shapiro. I know we don't want to, but we have to. I want you to think about this movie. I want you to think about every character who died in this movie. 6 people died in this movie. It's the most deaths out of any Knives Out movie. Every single person who died in this movie was tied to Eve's apple, either trying to steal it, trying to get a hold of it to hide it, trying to hoard it in regards to Prentice. And so figuratively, much like the Borgias Pearl, you could say this is a jewel that has a lot of blood on its hands. Rather than continuing down that path, rather than continuing to try and do something with the jewel, what Father Judd does is he puts it in the open cavity of this Jesus on the crucifix as a way to not keep it for himself or be selfish with it, but to shine light on all that come into the church. I mean, he broke the cycle, everyone. He did it. It's not really that the church is bad, right? This church specifically is bad because famously it's one without Jesus in it. They took the cross down and they refused to put it back up. So symbolically, and again, Ben doesn't understand symbols. He understands literal, logical things in front of him. He doesn't understand symbolism or story or themes. But symbolically, this is a church without Christ. So of course it's bad. That's the whole thing that Father Judd is trying to restore and does restore at the end right here with the jewel. So I got really frustrated with that. Hearing Ben say that why doesn't he do anything with the jewel? He does. It's this. It's symbolism. It's good writing.
It's a bad movie. I wish I could say that it were not a bad movie, but this has become typical for...
I don't believe that. I don't think you wish you could say it was not a bad movie. I think you wanted to say it was a bad movie.
But this has become typical for Rian Johnson, who really, I think, has a deep and abiding dislike of his own audience.
This movie is not about religion bad, church bad, things like that. I'm not religious. I don't like going to church. I have trauma if I have to step foot at a church again, all right? I don't like it. But that's not what this movie is trying to say. This is a great point that I wanted to make. Another reason why the jewel is put in the chest of the crucifixion of Jesus on the cross is, again, this sort of symbolism, think about it, Ben, of Jesus washing the blood away, sort of taking on that sin and becoming the way forward, the sort of absolution of sin, the original sin. I mean, it's called Eve's apple. It's literally the original sin. And the end of the movie has Jesus enveloping it as a way to take it on himself and protect everyone else. That is literally, what is that, John 3:16 through 18? That's what those verses are about. They're very famous verses, Ben.
He's all about just, can I subvert the expectations of my audience? He doesn't care about whether the audience expectations are good or useful. All he truly cares about is subverting the audience. I'm not sure there's a more overrated filmmaker working today than Rian Johnson. Honestly, it's astonishing how overrated he is.
Yeah, I just don't agree with Ben here, if you can believe it. I think these films are great modern mystery stories. If anything, Wake Up Dead Man inspired me to check out more locked room mysteries. Stories of criminals sneaking in and out of supposedly closed off spaces, the same way that scammers and malware used to sneak onto my devices before I started using this video's sponsor, NordVPN. And that's because NordVPN has evolved into an all-in-one digital security powerhouse, combining the world's leading VPN with a next-generation antivirus. When we think about locked room mysteries, the twist might be that the killer was secretly hiding in the room the whole time. Suddenly, a space that was thought to be private and secure was revealed to be harboring a dangerous secret. Similarly, any file can harbor malware, but NordVPN scans downloads for hidden infections and blocks access to dangerous websites before the damage is done. And it's rough out here in this digital space. Scammers pose as trusted sources to lower your guard. They use psychological traps pressuring you with urgency and authority. It honestly sucks that simply browsing the web requires so much mental bandwidth these days just to stay safe. And that's why I genuinely use and love NordVPN's privacy-first next-gen antivirus to root out camouflaged phishing links, detect scam websites, and block scammers preying on basic human instincts. With one subscription, you get protection from everyday threats across up to 10 of your devices, from laptops, smartphones, tablets, and even smart TVs. I have it set up on everything I own. Upgrade your online protection today with an all-in-one security app. Just visit nordvpn.com/NerdSync or click the link in the description to get an exclusive NordVPN deal plus 4 extra months. Best of all, trying it out is completely risk-free thanks to NordVPN's 30-day money-back guarantee. Again, that's nordvpn.com/NerdSync to lock down your digital life. Let NordVPN be your own personal gay Daniel Craig that protects you from dastardly digital devils and malware malarkey. Anyway.
Well, I have my opinion.
If you watched all that and now you still want to watch Knives Out, again, I'm not saying they're not points of entertainment. There are moments. They're buried in 2 and nearly a half hours of just kind of junk.
It's good, right?
All right. No accounting for taste.
No accounting for taste indeed, Ben. All right. That's my review of Ben Shapiro's review of Wake Up, Dead Man. Hey, if you want to see me do this live, go check out my second channel, NerdSync Sidekick, where I will be doing more of these live commentary videos. Get excited for Ben's review of Supergirl coming up. I'm sure that's going to be fun. Either way, thanks so much for watching. Bye. No, what do I say at the end? I say until next time, remember to explore your favorite art through curiosity, a big one, and vulnerability. See ya.